All right, let's get into this. This is a story that starts with two powerful men and a fatal duel. But it opens up into a much, much bigger battle. A battle over history itself. You know, how we tell it, who gets to do the telling, and what parts just get left out. So, picture this. We're in a small town in North Carolina. It's 1802. The sun is setting. There's this dispute that's been bubbling up in public for years. And tonight, it's about to come to a head. For 2 solid years, Congressman John Stanley and the former governor Richard Dobbs Speight had been at each other's throats, trading insults publicly. So they decided to settle it with a duel. They meet behind the Masonic Lodge. They fire 3 shots. Stanley's coat gets hit, and people watching are yelling at them to stop, but they don't. On the 4th shot, Stanley's bullet hits its target. And the very next day, Richard Dobbs Speight is dead. So a man is killed in a duel. Thing is, this wasn't just any man. His death was such a big deal that the state basically banned dueling right after. So who exactly was this guy? Well, his resume is, wow, seriously impressive. Speight was North Carolina's first governor who was actually born there. He was a signer of the U.S. Constitution, he was in the Continental Congress, Speaker of the House, a U.S. congressman, and, this part is really important for our story, he was the president of the University of North Carolina. This is the official version, right? The highlight reel of a founding father. And that's the big question, isn't it? We have this amazing list of accomplishments, a story of a guy who helped build a nation. But is that it? Is that the whole story? Does a list of job titles really tell you everything about a person or about the university he was in charge of? That very question is right at the center of this 2006 dissertation by a historian named John K. Chapman. And he argues that, yeah, there is another history. One that has been pushed down, suppressed, and if you really want to understand a place like the University of North Carolina, you have to look beyond that shiny, official story. Chapman gives us this really important term. He calls it celebratory history. Basically, it's when an institution tells its own story by only talking about the good stuff. It kind of smooths over its role in things like slavery or Jim Crow, and it pretends that none of that old history has any impact on today. It's history with all the messy, difficult parts conveniently edited out. And when you put the two side by side, the difference is pretty stark. The celebratory version calls UNC the University of the People, a light on the hill. But the suppressed history that Chapman uncovers tells a different story, an institution that actually helped slavery grow, whose leaders pushed for segregation, and which enforced Jim Crow laws for decades. So you have to wonder, how does a history like that stay hidden? Well, sometimes you can walk right past it every single day and have no idea. The evidence can be right there, literally carved into the front of a building. Take Saunders Hall. It's a building on the UNC campus, named back in 1924. It honors Colonel William L. Saunders, who was a big deal, a university trustee. But here's what that celebratory history leaves out. In the late 1860s, Colonel Saunders was also the leader of the North Carolina Ku Klux Klan, a university building named for the head of the Klan. In his research, Chapman shares this really powerful story. He asked a professor who actually worked in Saunders Hall how he felt about the name. And the professor just kind of shrugged it off, saying, "That was then, that's not my university now." But Chapman's reply just hits you right in the gut. He said, "I don't think the housekeepers would agree with you. Because for the black workers on that campus, that history wasn't just then. It was their reality every single day." And this gap in perception created 2 completely different realities in the same place. For a lot of people, Chapel Hill was the southern part of heaven. But Chapman found that for many of the black campus workers and people living in the community, it was known as the southern part of hell. And the university itself, they just called it the plantation. But Chapman's work isn't just about uncovering this history of oppression. It's also about bringing to light a suppressed history of resistance. He calls it Black freedom striving, and it refers to all the ways, big and small, that African Americans fought back, survived, and resisted the system that was trying to hold them down. And this gets us to the very core of Chapman's argument. He says that real progress at the university didn't just come as a gift from well-meaning leaders at the top. No, it was won. It was the direct result of that Black freedom striving, from Black workers who challenged racism every day, to big organized movements like the cafeteria workers' strike in 1969, and even student protests against buildings like Saunders Hall. Chapman brings in this quote from the anthropologist Michelle Rolfe Trujillo that just sums it all up perfectly. History is the fruit of power. Think about that. The power to write a celebratory history is really the power to make your own part in injustice totally invisible. So the real challenge then is to dig up and expose those roots. So, what this all really shows us is that history isn't just some dusty thing from the past. The story of the duel, the story of the university, the story of Saunders Hall, all of it proves that the stories we choose to tell, and just as importantly, the ones we choose to forget, directly shape the world we are all living in right now. And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. Because this isn't just about one university in North Carolina. It's a challenge to look at the institutions all around us, our own towns, our schools, our workplaces. What's the celebratory story they tell about themselves? And the bigger question is, whose story is getting left out of the picture?